Oops. Hello.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
I'll mute myself now.
Okay, thank you.
Is this being recorded?
Yes, it is.
So we'll be able to share it afterwards. Oops.
Yes, I will send the recording later today.
Great.
What's your name?
Mayo. Like
Hi, Mayo.
Hi,
I'm Jenna. Nice to meet you.
Jenna.
I like your background.
Oh, what do I have? Oh, yeah.
Hi, Sarah, if you hear me. You're welcome. Second, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. We're going to give it another 3 minutes. I think there's another 10 to 15 people jumping on the call. Hi, Natalie. Welcome to the free webinar. As you guys are signing on, make sure that you're muted, and if you can, take yourself off video. I do want to see you, but I'm not sure how many people are going to be on, and I want to make sure that the connectivity with Zoom stays. So thanks so much for doing that. We're going to get started here in about 2.5 minutes. Feel free to open up your chat box and feel free to send me a message. Let me know that you can hear me and that you can see me. Okay, thank you. Great. Give it another couple of minutes. You're welcome. Cool. Thank you, Natalie. Okay, I'll give it another minute or so. Those of you that are just joining, make sure that your audio is turned off, and if you can, turn off your video so the connectivity stays with Zoom so we don't have any tech issues. And then open up the chat box and just let me know that you can hear me and that you can see me. Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Okay, I'll give it a couple more seconds here as people start jumping on. Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have a lot of engaging material that's packed in this free webinar, so I definitely want to get started with this. I'll just say it one more time. Those of you that are just jumping on right now, just please make sure that your audio is off and your video is off, and then just have the chat box open. Feel free to use the chat box anytime during this webinar for you to share your thoughts. If you have any aha moments or have any breakthroughs at all, engage through the chat box. So go ahead and have it up. During this presentation, I'm going to be using a visual. So you'll see the visual, and then you'll also have me off to the side as well. Last thing is that I will be recording this webinar, and it will be sent to you sometime today for you to review. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, and you should be able to see my screen. If you can't, feel free to unmute and tell me that you can't see it or you can't hear me. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for coming to my free webinar today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit and listen and actively engage and actively learn and be a part of this discussion. So today we're going to talk about how to talk about racism. Okay, so before we get started, I want to remind you and just let you know that this is a safe environment. Um, it is a welcoming space of people of all diverse backgrounds. Okay, and my motto, if you've ever taken a class with me, if you've ever worked with me, my motto is that perfection is the lowest standard. So this class is not about you trying to be perfect or me trying to be perfect or trying to have the perfect solution or the perfect option. Okay, so just remember as you're kind of going through this work, if you start feeling guilt or if you start feeling shame, recognize that you're human and that being perfect is not in our DNA. Okay, and I will not be guilting you and I will not be shaming you for things that you have thought or said or maybe have not done. Okay, so just know that that's not my MO. I'm not here to guilt you. I'm not here to shame you. And if you have those feelings at all, just recognize that you're human and that you aren't perfect, right? And you're here to learn and you're here to embrace your awareness and really start the conversation. Okay. And then lastly is just to maintain respect of my material, of me, of people in the classroom, of what people say in the chat box. Show gratitude for someone's truth and, engage and empathize when necessary. As a reminder, you are all here for one of these 5 reasons, or maybe more than one of 5. So you are here because you are committed to fighting for racial justice in our society, and you believe that Black lives do matter. You are here because you are on a continuous journey of understanding your racial awareness. You're here to change the conversations around you. You're really open to having those more in-depth conversations. Maybe you're here because you're struggling on how to just start the dialogue when it comes to talking about racism. Or maybe you're here because you have personally experienced racial discrimination and you need some guidance and you need some support on how to have the conversation about it. Okay. So here is what we are going to go over today in the next hour. So I'm going to share a little bit about me and a little bit about my story. I'm going to really be open and be vulnerable with you and talk about the fears that I've had: fear of being heard, fear of being seen, fear of saying the wrong thing. Okay. I'm also going to, like I promised, teach you 3 simple techniques on how to start having more engaging conversations, right? And the whole goal is that you feel confident and that you feel supported while having these conversations. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about my upcoming 7-week workshop that I'm super excited to be teaching and hosting. Okay. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jenna. I am a certified teacher. I'm a professional coach. I'm a facilitator. I'm a trainer. I'm also a podcast host. I help people boost their confidence. I help them pivot from their burnout and their internal thinking and beliefs. And I help people live a purpose-driven life. So, I am the founder of Leading with Your Gut coaching and consulting. I teach online courses. I coach, I train, I facilitate, and I actually do some workplace consulting now on trainings. I'm super passionate about teaching things that matter and teaching topics that maybe we didn't learn when we were growing up or when we were in school or maybe with our families. Things such as racial awareness and privilege, finding purpose, building confidence, connecting with empathy, leadership skills, finding inner wisdom, career transition. Those are kind of all the topics that I really love and teaching about, and I'm so passionate about it because we weren't really taught these things growing up. Okay, this is a little bit about me, and this is my dog Pierre, by the way. So, like I said, I'm going to get real open and real vulnerable with you. I'm going to stand in my truth with you. So, I am mixed. I'm half Black and I'm half white. Okay, that's my genetic, racial identity and DNA makeup. Okay, for most of my life, I would say, when I really look at my privilege, I grew up with a lot of privilege. So, what does that mean? That means that I grew up middle to upper class, in a nuclear type family. My brother and my sister and I, we went to really good schools, public schools, and then college as well. We were always super supported. We didn't often have to worry about money. We lived in a safe neighborhood. And I also acknowledge too with my privilege that because I am mixed and I have lighter skin and I have a softer texture of my hair, that it has been a benefit or an advantage to me in certain situations. So, for example, I acknowledge the fact that in terms of getting a job, I don't think I've ever been discriminated against for being mixed, right, and finding a job. Okay, I don't think I've ever been racially profiled by the police. I've never been pulled over for being Black. I've never had to experience the day-to-day functionalities of life that so many people have to constantly think about. For example, I can walk into a store and I know that the manager is not going to follow me, right, and thinking that I'm stealing. So I acknowledge the fact that I have a very, very privileged life. Okay, and I am fortunate. I also want to acknowledge the fact that even though I am privileged, I do experience quite a bit of racial discrimination in my life. It's been ongoing and it has been constant, and unfortunately, it has kind of ingrained as part of my life. So, what do I mean by that? So, I am constantly in situations where a lot of racist comments are brought up. I'm in situations where there's a lot of unconscious bias that flies back and forth. Sometimes there's explicit bias. I'm often the target of many microaggressions. The ones that I typically get often are, when people say to me, "What are you?" And I just kind of an offensive thing to say. And I reply back, I'm part Black. And they'll say something like, "Wow, I didn't know you were Black. You're so pretty." That's a very confusing and targeted microaggression. People say to me all the time, "Wow, you're Black. You're so articulate." Things like that. So I get these on a daily basis, often and all the time. I often feel like I'm the token Black friend or I'm the token employee. In every single situation that I've been in, whether it's school, every single employer that I've had, my friends group, any type of like groups, even when I was younger in church, I've often been the one of the only Black people there. So I have felt like I'm the token Black individual. It's very uncomfortable for me to speak about those things, or it has been. And then often, when I do want to share a story of racial discrimination, or I just want to talk about racism, I'm often not taken seriously, where people will gaslight me, or they'll change the subject, or they'll get fragile, or not know what to say. So it's hard for me to engage. Right. And then the last thing is that I'm often surrounded by people who speak very poorly of Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color, who make inappropriate jokes. This happened often in previous work environments where it was just very difficult for me to say something because it's hard for me to feel protected. Okay, so these are my truths, and this is my vulnerability. So I want to share the pain of speaking up and speaking out. And in the chat box, as I'm talking about my pain struggles, I want you to let me know in the chat box, and I'll check on the chat box after this, if you resonate with any of the things that I've said. And if not, think about fears that you have had about why it's so hard for you to speak up, speak out, and be engaged. And I want you to be truthful. There's no wrong answer. I want you to stand in your truth, right? Recognize you're not perfect. Recognize I'm not here to guilt you or shame you, and no one else is here either. Accept the truth that comes out of you. Okay, so here are some of my fears that I've had that are honestly based on my experience. So here are some of them. So here's one. No one will engage in this conversation with me. This has been a huge issue, okay, of people not wanting to talk about racism. That's been like a good majority of my life. Or they only want to talk about it on Martin Luther King Day or during Black History Month. Okay, or when someone else is murdered by the police and it's visible. I've often felt like someone was gaslighting me or shamed or telling me that my voice and my opinion don't matter. I often don't feel protected or defended. Sometimes I feel that I'm so privileged that my experience of racial discrimination doesn't matter, right? Sometimes I'll think, I'm so privileged, I don't even deserve to share my story, right? Compared to somebody else. So then that way I won't share it. Sometimes I think too, even as someone who is Black, who is mixed, I will think, I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to say something dumb. I'm going to say something, stupid, and no one will take me seriously. I'm going to say one wrong thing. No one will take me seriously. Sometimes I feel like, well, I don't have a PhD, right? I don't have a PhD in racism. You only have to have a PhD or a master's degree or something in that regard to really be an expert in that field and really be able to talk about it, right? I've had that belief system in my head too. Sometimes I feel like if someone is sharing their experience with me, sometimes I'm so worried that I'm going to gaslight them. Maybe I'm going to say the wrong thing to them because I'm not going to have the exact same experience as them, right? So sometimes I'll kind of shut down too. And then, often I've had many times where I have found myself to be the people pleaser, which a lot of women have confided in me that sometimes they feel like they have this people pleaser mentality of you have to be the one to keep the peace in all situations. And you're expected as a woman to keep things calm and to really kind of work things out and instead of really engaging in deeper conversations. And then finally, for me, assimilation to the American idea of culture, to whiteness, has been something that has been ingrained in me, and it's been easier to do for survival, honestly, right? So not talking about these things, not normalizing these things, has been something that's just been kind of ingrained within me. So these are some reasons why I haven't really spoken up previously or talked about it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I want to see what some of you wrote in the chat box. Let's see here. Someone wrote, "What is gaslighting?" No worries if you don't know what that is. Gaslighting is basically when you share a story and someone basically tells you that your story is wrong and that your story doesn't exist and that you're basically just making it up and it's your fault that that thing happened to you. Okay, that's what gaslighting is. When someone says, "I have this very traumatic story or this experience that I've lived through," and the other person is not very receiving, and they make you feel like you're in the wrong, and they make you feel like you didn't have that experience. Let's see here. Let's read one more. Okay, great. Sarah says, "I have a pretty easy time speaking up and witnessing." Um, and recognizing something me racist calling out, that's great. This is a habit. I struggle more with persisting in conversation and trying to respond to the comeback or the devil's advocate. Yes, that is definitely one, right? You have this fear of, what if I'm talking to someone who is the ultimate devil's advocate and I don't know what to say, right? That is definitely something. Natalie, I'll read one more. You talk about being afraid to speak about racism with your white family because they want to see proof, right? They want to see data. They want to see that it actually does exist. And if you don't have the stats, if you don't have a personal story, yes, I understand. How are you able to talk about that? Yeah. And then the other Sarah said, "Having trouble trusting my own judgment." Yes. Thank you so much for your truth and your honesty. These are all super valid. These are all very valid reasons. Okay. So hang tight. I'm going to switch back to the screen. We're going to keep going. Okay, so the past 7 years, if you listen to my podcast, Leading with Your Gut, I talk a lot about self-awareness. The past 7 years for me have just been like an all-encompassing self-awareness period. So what I mean by that is that I've gone through these years of unraveling these expectations about who I should be as a Black biracial woman, what I should think, what I should believe, what I should say, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. So the past 7 years have just been peeling back the layers of what's been imprinted on me and then what I truly think and believe and what my experiences are. Okay. So because of this self-awareness that I've just been on this journey of, and my own personal experience of racial discrimination and then constant visibility of racism and police brutality over the last 7 years since Trayvon Martin, I really feel like my voice has progressed, right? It's progressed stronger and stronger and slower over time, where I'm able to have more engaging conversations and be less fearful of what could happen to me if I start speaking out. Okay. And basically what I realized is that life is not meant for me to stay quiet. Life is meant for me to speak and to speak up and to embrace my fears. Okay. That was kind of my whole self-awareness and my self journey with this. Okay. So the biggest conversation today is, well, then how do I have engaging conversations about racism, right? How do I have conversations with difficult people, with family members who, want so much data, they want so many statistics, they want so many personal stories, people who don't believe that it exists. How do I have engaging conversations with my kids, or my community, or my employees, maybe even my clients, right? How do we have these engaging conversations? Okay. So I'm going to teach you just 3 techniques on how to do this. And my whole goal is for you to feel empowered, for you to feel confident, and for you to feel safe when you start having these conversations and when you really start speaking your truth. Okay, so that's my goal for you to feel this. This is not going to happen overnight. So this is going to be a lifelong commitment and dedication to working on this, right? And there are other techniques and strategies. I'm just going to teach you 3 right now to focus on, for you to be really aware of and to think about as you move into these conversations. Feel free to use your phone to take a photo of any of these slides, by the way. If you feel like that would be helpful, that's totally fine. So the first thing which I think is the most important thing, and I actually brought it up a little bit earlier. It's the most important thing before you even really start engaging in the conversation is you need to do this. You need to find the courage to normalize the conversation of racism. Okay, I'm going to go way into this in just a second, so hang tight. Number 2 is you need to strategize. Who is your audience? Who are you talking to? And you need to empathize and lead with it. Okay, the third way is you need to create a safe space to engage and practice. Okay, so let me continue. The first one, this is the most important piece. Okay, you need to find the courage to normalize this conversation, to make it normal into your everyday life. Now, think about that. Okay, I want you to think about this. Open up the chat box or go to the chat box. Think to yourself, were you ever taught to normalize the conversation about racism? Were you ever taught to talk about it? Were you ever taught how to talk about it? Were you ever taught when to talk about it? Think about that. Did you learn how to talk about it in school? Did you learn how to talk about it with your family, with your friends, and your church groups? Think about those things. Have you ever normalized the conversation? Okay. Think about what outlets were provided for you to freely talk about racism without shame and guilt. Are there any outlets, maybe particularly prior to George Floyd's death? Okay, have there been any outlets for you to freely talk about it? Think about this. I think I said this earlier, but when is it okay to talk about racism? Have your parents or your teachers or your community said it's okay to talk about racism only in this setting or only on this day, like Martin Luther King Day, or only on Black History Month, but all this other time, not okay to talk about it? Or did it kind of get grouped in with this idea of, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk about money, don't talk about sex, don't talk, right? Was it kind of grouped into all of these taboo type topics as you were growing up? When the topic of racism does start, when the discussion is going, was the conversation cut off? Does it get defensive? Does it get fragile? Were you interrupted? Was someone else interrupted? Was someone else shamed? Was someone else laughed at? Did people freeze or be paralyzed and not know what to do? So think about your past experiences of when you have brought up the conversation. What's happened? What's happened in that moment? Are you someone who maybe shared an experience that you've had, some trauma that you've had, or maybe that your friend has had, right? And maybe the response from the individual receiving it was just keep your head up and keep moving, or they didn't really say anything back, or they didn't really acknowledge your story, right? Or your story of your friend or your family. Did you ever feel awkward or feel fearful, right? When talking about it, you get like tense and you don't know what to say and you start sweating, right? Think about all these conversations. And then finally, think back, what conversations have I been taught to talk about that's acceptable? Like, what is acceptable? What have I been taught to talk about, right? That's acceptable to talk about. Right, so think about that and then think about, well, why wasn't a very important topic like racism, why was that not ingrained? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop share. I just want to see what some of you guys said in here. Okay, no, not that I can think of. Okay, yeah, a lot of you are speaking your truth. No, not really. High school started a student-led forum. That's great, to discuss issues. You felt really fortunate. That's awesome, Natalie. Yet there are several white people who took it upon themselves to play victim. Yes, when they felt like they were being called out. Yes, that is white fragility. That is something that does exist in my current course that I have right now on privilege. We talk about white fragility and how that is definitely a thing. Okay, so thank you so much for your truth. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing again. Okay, so here's the big picture. I'm just going to be very real with you, very direct. The big picture is that talking about racism is not normalized in our society. When I mean society, I mean the United States, but I definitely mean on a broader sense as well, because I know this is not normal in most places. So many people do not want to embrace the idea of racism. They don't want to feel its pain. They don't want to be aware of it. They want to keep their curtain closed. Okay. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to accept it. And they don't want to do anything about it. It's too painful. It's too painful to be exposed. It's too painful to talk about, right? They've been taught their whole life not to talk about it. Okay. So talking about racism is so taboo. It's kind of the same thing as talking about other subjects that we've learned to be taboo, like sexuality. We've been taught, most people have been taught that that's a very taboo thing to talk about. You only talk about them in certain situations. Okay. The idea and the belief that racism still flows and exists on a continuum is such a controversy, right? Racism is alive and well and has gone nowhere since the start of slavery, you guys. It has literally gone nowhere. But that idea is such a controversy for so many people who don't want to unveil their curtain and don't want to talk about it because racism is a taboo topic and it's a taboo idea. So there are a lot of Black, Indigenous, and people of color who have stories of racial oppression, and often they're told that their story is wrong, that they don't matter, and that they need to pull themselves up by the bootstrap, right? This bootstrap theory, okay? Most of us, many people, just in general, we're not taught how to listen and connect with empathy. Growing up, you guys, I was not taught in school how to connect with empathy. I didn't really learn social skills when I was growing up. I know it's more common now, which is great, but so many people do not know how to connect and lead and communicate with empathy. So they don't know how to have these conversations. So, in conclusion, talking about racism feels unsafe. It feels unsafe for people of color to talk about, and it feels unsafe for people who are white to talk about. Okay. We have been taught that talking about racism is taboo. That's why we don't want to talk about it. So before you even start to engage in any conversation, I want you to think about these things. Okay. I want you to think about this. Before I even really start engaging in these conversations, I need to start unlearning what I've been taught. I've been taught that it's a hard conversation. I've been taught that you don't really talk about it. I've been taught that you have to have, pages of data and statistics to prove a point, right? I've been taught that you have to be an expert to talk about it. I've been taught that only if you have a significant, racial trauma you can talk about it. Start unlearning the things that you have been taught. Okay? The second thing is accept that racism is so ingrained in every single thing that we do. In my current class on privilege right now, we're going over this a lot with my students. Racism is so ingrained in our beliefs, our thoughts, our stories, our perceptions, our laws, our policies, how we hire, how we fire, our curriculum. It's so ingrained, and that's why it's become so complex. Understand too that as you start having these conversations, regardless of who you're talking to or what you're sharing, if you feel awkward, there's a good chance that the person on the other side of you also feels awkward too. So even if you're feeling the other person give you a lot of white fragility and a lot of defensiveness or shutting you down, know that that is stemming from a place of fear from them, and know that they are so uncomfortable talking about this, right? Recognize that. Here's the other thing too. To talk about racism, you don't have to have all the answers, right? You don't have to. You don't have to have pages of data. You don't have to have the exact, statistic down to the percentage, right, to prove your point. Here's the thing, guys. The data and the research has been there since the start of slavery. The research and data is there for people to read. It is readily available for people to go through and read. So you don't need to be, finding all this research and data, because it is there and available. This is not like new research or new data. This is data that's been there for a long time. Okay, so remember that. And then the lastly is find the courage, find your inner voice, right? Realign with your inner wisdom. Okay, start talking to your inner critic and your inner wisdom to change the narrative about racism, to change the way you see racism. Instead of saying, oh, racism is so difficult, I can't ever have this conversation. Start changing the narrative inside your head. So, what do I mean by this? So, connecting with your inner wisdom. Here are just some great things to say to yourself, right? To get you kind of prepared to have these conversations. Recognizing that, yeah, this has been a difficult conversation, but I need to normalize this. I'm ready to normalize this. This is a normal thing that we need to be talking about. It is so ingrained in every single thing that we do. Accept the fact that you might say something wrong, or accept the fact that maybe you have said something wrong. Remember, we're not perfect here. We're human beings. We are not meant to be perfect. We probably will mess up, and we probably have messed up. Okay. Maybe you want to start having conversations, more difficult conversations, where you are using a de-arming method, which we'll talk about in just a second, with friends and family that might be racist or might have what I like to call a closed veil to their curtain. Maybe you want to keep saying to yourself, I want to strive towards anti-racism and allyship in my network or at work. I want to become more involved in groups and start having these conversations. I want to do this. I want to have the courage to do this. Maybe you want to say, I need to start standing up for people who are constantly being discriminated against. I don't do that enough. I need to just start standing up. Okay. Maybe you want to start sharing experiences of discrimination with people that you trust in really, really tight knit support groups. Okay. Or maybe you just want to feel the support of your trusted network to protect you and your thoughts and your journey towards racial awareness. Right. So start saying these things to yourself to kind of get yourself to feel confident and have the courage to normalize the conversation. Okay. Oops. So to recap this big section, which is the biggest piece, you guys, is here's the thing. Courage starts with you. You have the power to change the conversation and to normalize it. You have the power to talk to your inner critic and start changing the dialogue and thinking about the ways that you want to engage, right? You have the power to accept the fact that racism, the topic of racism and racism in general, has been so taboo. And you've probably learned that. And it's been difficult to have these conversations on a continuum. Okay, so once you really start normalizing it and accepting these truths around you, the engagement and the empowerment piece will start to come. Okay, that's number one. This is the biggest one, you guys, the hardest one and the biggest one. The second thing is you want to strategize and you want to empathize. Okay, strategize and empathize. Okay, this is going to help you as you really start to have these more meaningful conversations. Okay, so what do I mean by strategize? So, when you are engaging in this conversation, regardless of if you're talking to your kids or your family that might be racist or might have a closed curtain, okay, or maybe people that are like-minded like you, okay, you want to think to yourself, who is my audience and who do I want to engage with? Okay, and even when you're kind of thrown in the ring of fire, where maybe you're around people that are talking about how terrible Black Lives Matter is and how racism doesn't exist, just sit and listen and say to yourself, who's my audience? Okay, what are their beliefs? What do I think their beliefs are? Right? And how do I want to engage with them? Because the way that you engage with people is going to look different based on their perception. Okay, so strategize, have a strategy. So your audience is really going to drive your conversation. Before you engage, who am I talking with? What do I think their beliefs are? Okay, take that, and that's how you run with the conversation to get it going. Okay, also think about, what are you trying to to accomplish here? What is your goal in the conversation that you're in? What do you want to accomplish? And then finally, you want to create small and meaningful conversations with people that are intended for small wins. I think a lot of people think I'm going to have this conversation and I'm going to just throw out fact and statistic and evidence and everything like that, and I'm going to win the argument. That typically does not happen when someone on the receiving end perceives racism totally different. Okay, so your goal is that you want to create meaningful conversations that are intended for a small win. So here are different ways that you can connect with people. Okay, so you can ask for support with people that you already trust, that you already know are like minded like you, right? You can share an experience with someone that you trust, someone who is open to your vulnerability, someone who's not going to gaslight you, someone that you know for sure is going to listen to you, your ideas and your thoughts and what you're working through. Those conversations are going to be much easier when you're connecting with people that are like-minded like you. Okay. Ways to connect, de-arm and de-escalate. So this is a situation where you get thrown in the ringer, right? You have a group of people or a few people that are saying racism doesn't exist. I need all this data. I need all this evidence, or this isn't true, right? The best way to handle this situation, and this is a choice that you're going to have to make, but the best way to handle this situation is to recognize who your audience is and to say to yourself, I just want to have one small win today. I know this is going to be a lifelong of conversations, particularly if I really care about this person and if they're a loved one. This is going to be a small win. So you're going to want to say things to get them to de-escalate and to de-arm. You're going to want to say things like Dad, like I acknowledge your frustration with all of this. Racism is really hard to talk about. I don't think we've ever been taught to talk about this. And I'm really interested in having a more meaningful conversation with you, right? Use almost like a coaching technique to open up that conversation. That might allow that person on the receiving end to de-arm and de-escalate, and then they can start talking, right? And acknowledge some of the things that they say, right? By saying this is a very complex situation and this is a very ingrained conversation. And I'm glad that you're speaking up about these things. I really want to continue this conversation with you. Right? So over time, you are de-arming them instead of just throwing stat for stat or statistic, because that's what they're looking for, right? You want to come in with a different approach to really build this lifelong engagement. Okay. Kind of like what I said before, you want to raise awareness with like-minded people. So find your people that are like-minded, that want to learn, that want to engage, that are self-aware, trying to be self-aware, where you can really talk about these things. And then for those people that are interested in learning from you, or maybe they're your kids, maybe they're your students, educate those that want to learn. Right? Don't shame them for saying the wrong thing or thinking something differently. If people want to learn, engage in that learning. Okay? So empathize. Anytime that you're in a situation where people are sharing an emotional experience with you, right? You want to lead with empathy. You want to listen and speak with empathy. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you want to actively listen. If someone is sharing a story with you, you want to actively listen without interrupting them, without speaking, without inserting your opinion or advice. You want to show support. You want to show gratitude for someone sharing a story with you. Sharing a personal story of discrimination is really hard to do, particularly if you're not entirely sure if that person will believe you or not. So if someone is sharing an emotional experience with you, or their strong stance on the racial discrimination that they've experienced, whether you understand it or not, thank them and acknowledge their story, right? Um, don't gaslight or don't compare unless you have literally had the exact same experience as they have had. Okay, so tips and tricks, word tracks for you to say, as these situations come up, if people come to you, if people start talking about these things in groups and you're not really sure what to say back or how to engage back, just depending on the situation, something you can say, I support you and I care about you. Sometimes that's just enough. Okay. Sometimes it's thank you for sharing your experience with me. I hear you. I see you. Or maybe it's racism is a very important topic to me. I want to start the dialogue with you. I want to just start the dialogue. Or maybe it's, there's something I really want to connect with you about. It's something that's happened to me in the past or it's happened to a loved one and I really just want to share this experience. Right? And I trust that what you have to say stays with you. Okay? So you want to strategize and you want to empathize. Who is your target audience? Who is your audience? Who are you engaging with? Okay, for each person in each group, you may have to have a different strategy, but always try your best to lead with empathy as much as you can. And understand that for the people that are most difficult in your life, it's not going to be this huge win. It's going to be small, little, tiny wins. So ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish here? What do I want to accomplish? Okay. What feels right to bring up now? And then what can I wait for the next conversation? So create a plan. Okay. The third thing, then I'm going to stop sharing and get your thoughts. The third thing I want to teach you is to create a safe space to engage, right? And to practice talking about racism. This is so important. Okay. This is kind of like if you want to be good at a skill or if you want to be good at a sport or anything like that, you want to create a space where you can do that well and you want to practice, right? Knowing that you're going to be successful. This is basically the same thing. So the first thing is, I brought this up a little earlier, is you want to find your people. You want to find your tribe, particularly if you're someone that has maybe racist family members, or you're realizing that maybe some of your friends are not supporters of Black Lives Matter and maybe they are racist, or maybe you're in a situation at work where no one really cares or no one really wants to do something. One of my students in my current class, he is struggling right now because at his huge company, no one really seems to care. Within his department, no one really seems to care but him. He's the only one that cares, and he's really struggling with that. So you need to start finding like-minded people. And here's the thing, guys, if you are feeling a certain way, guaranteed that other people are feeling the same way as you. There are other people out there that are feeling like, I need to find my people, but I don't know where to find them. Okay, they are all around. So you need to think to yourself, how can I start finding these people? So think about who in your friend group can you really trust and confide with? Okay, who can you really start having a conversation with? What about in your family? Do you have maybe one person, two people that you can say, hey, I think you and I are like-minded. I would just love to start having more engaging conversations with you about racism. I'd really like that. Or maybe at work, my student in the other class, he found that there actually was a group at his organization for allyship. He had no idea that existed. All he had to do was find it, and now he's part of that group, and he feels so supported now, which is great. Maybe it's in therapy. Maybe it's in support groups in your community. Maybe it's a mom's group. Maybe it's within your church. Think in your church, are there any type of support groups that I can join, or can I start one? Because guaranteed if I start one, there's going to be other people in the community that want to join and want to start talking about these things free of feeling shamed. Okay, maybe there's a book club, like an online book club or online group that you can join. Um, And, maybe any other social media groups. I know that Facebook has a lot of groups that you can join. So guaranteed there has got to be groups that you can find for more support and to freely start talking about these things and engaging your voice muscle and becoming aware and feeling comfortable talking about these things on a routine basis, so it becomes easier for you to have these conversations with difficult people and to normalize it. Okay. And then lastly is you want to create a safe space for other people. So when people come to you with a story or something that they want to talk about, you want to create a safe space for them, whether it's a one-on-one interaction and you want to go on a safe walk or have a conversation with them where they are heard and their story is validated and they're amplified. Okay. Or maybe it's a group situation that you're coming into and someone wants to talk about racism, right? You're totally caught off guard, and so is everybody else. Be the leader and defend the person's story. Listen, tell other people to listen, protect the person who's talking about it, and then start having the conversation, or maybe say things like, wow, thank you so much for sharing. I haven't experienced your pain, but I appreciate you, and I hear and I see your pain. I would love to just learn more about it. Be the leader that starts the conversation in the group. Okay. On social media, if you're noticing that someone is posting an emotional story, defend them and protect them and uplift their story, amplify them. I also noticed too, this happens a lot in work environments. In my two previous careers, this happened often where there's a lot of microaggressions and tension, and where people really couldn't be heard. So make sure that you are uplifting people and creating space for them to get this conversation going. And then finally, if you're in a workshop or a class or online course or anything like that, make sure that you're actively listening, you're open, you are participating, and you're gaining perspective. Okay. So to wrap up here before I kind of bring it back to you is, here's the thing: engagement is best when you feel you're in a safe environment. Just like when you're learning a new skill, you're learning a new sport, you need to create the space for you to learn the skill, to practice the skill, right? To allow yourself to be seen and be heard shame-free and to get better at it, so then you can apply it in other situations. The more that you can attract like-minded people and the more that you can find your groups within your network, the safer you're going to feel and the more empowered and confident you are going to feel when you start having those difficult conversations with family members and with friends. Okay. So I actually want to stop the share right now. I just want to hear your thoughts in the chat box. Let me know, what are your thoughts on this? What ahas or what takeaways did you get from these three strategies of normalizing the conversation, strategizing, and empathizing, and then creating the space? What do you think? Can you take any of this teaching with you? And you know what, since I think we only have less than 20 people, if you want to unmute and share, go for it. That is totally fine. What takeaways did you get? What can you apply moving forward? Yeah, Jillian, thank you. Love the idea of always leading with empathy. That's such a good starting point. Yes, thank you. What else? What other takeaways? Feel free to share. There's no judgment here. You can unmute if you want, or you can write in the chat box.
You're probably going to hear a little person in the background, so sorry if there's a little interference.
No worries.
Hi. I really appreciate just the reminder that this takes a lot of work, I think, because sometimes it's just easy to wait for an opportunity, and then if you haven't practiced, then it kind of whizzes past you, or you freeze up and you don't know what to say. And so I appreciate just the reminder that, like, we need to practice with people who are safe.
Yeah.
so that we're ready. It's sort of like a self-defense class. Like you practice in the safe space, and
Mhm.
then if you have to use those skills, you're ready when the time comes. So I just really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That is so important. And just recognizing that, we haven't been taught to have these conversations. Probably most of us haven't really had a space where we could be freely and talk about it, maybe up until now. Let's see, a couple other people said, Natalie said, realizing that maybe I come on too strong when discussing with family members. Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. You're not wrong by coming on too strong because you want to get your point across. But people who are so set in stone in their ways, people who do not want to accept that it exists, they are going to come at you. They're going to come at you hard, and they're going to require quite a bit of proof. And you can start recognizing this in their body language and in their tone and how do they react to certain situations. It is literally their fragility, their defensiveness, their fear, right, of it actually being true and them being wrong. So you want to take that and really say, how can I break this up piece by piece and de-arm them so we can really start having longer conversations over time, right, with small, little, tiny wins, small wins. Tiffany says, normalizing the conversation is so powerful. Yes, it is absolutely powerful. Let's see here, small wins, strategizing was really helpful, wonderful. Trying to convince someone of everything is exhausting and impossible. Oh, it's so exhausting. Yes, but it comes with small wins. Yes, that's amazing. Wonderful. I want to share an opportunity with you. Like I said, I'm a certified teacher, I'm a professional coach, I'm a facilitator and trainer. I teach a course on privilege and awareness where my students have the ability to feel free and feel vulnerable to talk about these things in a safe space. So I have created a brand new workshop for you where you can feel safe and engaged to talk about these things that we were not taught to talk about, particularly topics that are very taboo. So I'm going to share my screen with you one more time, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I'll be on at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So my workshop that's coming up next Wednesday, the 22nd, it's called Talking About Racism. That's literally what it's called. It is a 7-week workshop, okay, of once per week from 11 a.m. to 12:15 on Wednesdays, Pacific Standard Time, 75 minutes of group work, okay, plus an additional hour on Fridays for group coaching and one-on-one coaching if you need that. So this is a space for you to be free and to be open and feel liberated and really start learning and engaging and talking about these things without feeling judged, without feeling like you're being gaslit, without feeling like you are being ashamed. And in this course, in this workshop, we are normalizing the conversation. So as a result, you're going to feel so confident and empowered. Okay, so like I said, this is a 7-week course where it's tailored for engagement, for learning and discovery, and it's open to all racial identities and all racial backgrounds. So here's what you're going to do in this course. You're going to have a safe space, right, where you're going to feel open and you're going to feel heard, shame-free. You're going to have the ability to share stories about your family, personal experiences, about things that friends have said, and talk about it freely, right? You are going to discuss topics that are often hard for you to talk about in your personal network or that have been deemed as taboo. You're going to gain confidence in talking about racism outside of the small, intimate groups. Like I said, you're going to feel so empowered to talk about it outside of this community that I am creating for you. And you're going to start learning the perspectives of other people and probably recognize that you are not alone. You are not alone in any of this. Okay, so this workshop is for you, right? The same thing that I said earlier. If you believe that Black Lives Matter and you really want to fight for racial justice, This workshop is for you if you need a safe space. Maybe you do not have a safe space right now to talk and learn and engage. This workshop is for you. This workshop is for you if you have the desire to normalize the conversation. You're on this continuous journey of racial awareness. You're confused. You're being challenged. You really just want to start talking about things that you never learned to talk about when you were a kid or even when you were an adult. Okay, or the spaces for you to share about racial discrimination or racial discrimination that maybe your friend or your family member has had. Okay, so like I said, the weekly workshops are going to be on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 12:15 on Zoom. I'm only taking 8 people for this class because it is going to be very intimate setting. So this setting will be a chance for you to really be heard and to discuss. It's going to start next Wednesday on the 22nd, and it's going to run through September 2nd. Okay, so here's going to be the flow of the workshop for each week. And I want to remind you or let you know that my teaching style is very self-reflective. It's very empathetic. Prior to each class and each workshop, you will have reflective questions to think about prior to coming into this class. So you will be kind of prepped to know what you're going to talk about. So here's the agenda and the flow of the workshop, right? We're going to talk about assimilation to whiteness, what that actually means. Okay, we're going to talk about cultural appropriation versus appreciation, as well as the start of blackface. Okay, we're going to talk about things like tokenism and meritocracy. We're going to talk about reverse racism and discrimination. Okay, we're going to have a session. Session 5 is all about having tough conversations about racism. We're going to do scenarios and role play. You're going to have the opportunity beforehand to send me past experiences so I can create a session for you to role play and play devil's advocate for other people so you can feel comfortable in the real world. And then the last 2 sessions are going to be student choice, where you're going to have the opportunity to choose a topic or vote on a topic or subject that you want me to teach or facilitate and that we discuss. So for example, maybe you want to just talk about mass incarceration. You're learning that it basically is the same thing as slavery. You want to talk about that. Maybe you want to talk about European beauty standards, or you want to talk about more go into microaggressions or perspectives of immigrants or dismantling systems, right? Or anything else that you would like to bring to the table. Okay, so with each of these 7 75-minute sessions, plus an hour each week, right, of the optional group coaching, it's a total of 945 minutes of content that is engaging and that is a place where you can learn. Okay, so what are you going to gain out of this? Like I said, you're going to feel really empowered to talk about tough shit. Okay, you are going to feel empowered to normalize this conversation. You're going to feel part of this community that I'm creating for you. You're going to feel liberated and confident to finally start talking about things that actually matter. And you're going to feel empowered to speak about racism and have confidence outside of this group in your inner circle, particularly in situations that are super hard to talk about this. Okay, that's what you're going to gain out of this course. People who have taken my privilege course, those are the things that they have said about the course, is it is a space that I create for them to be free, to be open, to be liberated, and to build confidence within themselves. So this workshop is on sale. The value for everything that I'm putting together, 945 minutes of content, the group coaching, weekly coaching, it's valued at $699. Okay, 945 minutes, 7 weeks of coaching. If you really break those, everything out, the group coaching and the workshops, it's actually about $50 per session. Okay, so I'm going to have this link sent to you in a follow-up email. I'm also going to put it in the chat box. If you are someone that wants to be in this workshop and right now finances are really hard for you, you're going to have a chance to apply for a scholarship based on your situation. I am allowing people who are having hardships that really want to be in this class to enroll in the class. If you're someone that says, I can't do the payment up front, but I can split it into 2, you can have that option option as well. So make sure that you check your email with the different options so you can feel engaged and you can feel like you are part of the situation. I am going to actually really quickly just put that link right now in the chat box if you want to check it out. Or like I said, you are free to look at it more in the email that will be sent to you. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and send this to everybody right now so they have it. And then before we go, it's 12 o'clock. I got you out of here 15 minutes early. Before we go, any last thoughts, any takeaways, any questions about my services or about the workshop? Feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat box. I'm just going through the chat box and seeing what some of you have said. Okay, Natalie, yeah, you had a frustrating conversation about AAV, yes. And how it's not proper English. Yes, that is definitely a topic that is not normalized. That is something, that we can talk about. Let's see here. The system, okay, having to tell people, okay, got it. Being bilingual, okay. Also, I'm a white person to tell Black people how they should and shouldn't communicate with each other. Yes, that's something that we can talk about as well. Anyone want to unmute and talk about anything else? And share anything that they're struggling with or ask any questions about the upcoming workshop? Okay, I'm going to be here for the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. That's the end of my presentation. That is the end of my workshop. I want to thank you so much for joining this webinar and for being open and for listening. And just thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I'm going to be on for the next 10, 15 minutes. If you just want to chat with me, feel free to unmute yourself or take yourself off video. If I don't talk to you, have a great rest of your day and watch out for your email of this recording and of the offering that I will send you. Question. Thank you for sharing the training. I appreciate that it's free. Is there a way that we can pay you for your time and the education today? That is a great question. Thank you, by the way. Sure, I can set up like a donation or an amount that you want to pay. I can put that in an email that I send to you, where you can pay what you feel like would be appropriate for this. So yeah, I will definitely put that in the email. Thank you so much. I didn't think of anything like that. That's very generous of you. Thank you. And Natalie, awesome. I'm so glad that you learned so much. So I think you're off though. Yeah. Okay, people that are still on, Sarah, Tiffany, Sarah, Blythe, anything else you want to say? Oh, good. You're welcome. I'm glad you gained something out of it. You're welcome. Yeah, Tiffany, I get it. This is not an overnight thing, right? There's a lot to process and dive deep in it. So be kind to yourself as you go through this journey, and just know that you're not perfect. No one's perfect. And just embrace everything that's happening around you. Okay, Tiffany or Blythe, are you still on? I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes here, and I'm going to end the recording just to make sure Tiffany and Blythe don't have a question. Okay, sounds good. Blythe, are you still on, December? Okay, I don't think Blythe's part of December. I don't think she's on anymore. Maybe it's just mute. Tiffany, if you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself, or you can take off your video if you feel comfortable, or you can chat with me in the chat box, whatever you feel. Hi, there you are.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
Yeah, super thankful.
Yeah.
Super thankful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was, okay, so I'll just say I grew up in a super racist household. I didn't know it, obviously, like and my mother's an immigrant. I'm Asian and white. But super racist against Black people, and didn't know it until in elementary school a teacher called me out, and I'm really glad, like I'm so thankful, because I had no idea. But yeah, so but I love it. I mean, there's so many things that you shared that I'm gonna keep processing, but like normalizing the conversation, that's definitely, it's so not normalized. Like I didn't realize, I mean, I've been realizing it, but even that verbiage and that, like, not something I thought about or realized before.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you're not alone in this. So there are a lot of people who are Black that have been taught also to not normalize the conversation, right? There have been a lot of people who have been told to go into survival mode. A lot of Black people, not everybody, but a lot, feel like they have to survive, right? So talking about these things, talking about grief, talking about trauma is pointless. You need to assimilate, you need to hustle, and you need to survive. Right? So it's not just you who has been taught that the idea of talking about racism is taboo. It's within our culture. It's within American culture, to be taught that we don't talk about these things because, it's pointless, or it doesn't exist, or it's not going to get anywhere. And that's why it's so hard to talk about it. Yeah. So just know you're not alone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I stuck it out. So I gotta actually meet you.
Yeah. Where do you, what city are you in?
I'm in Phoenix.
Okay, cool. Nice. How did you hear about the workshop?
Blythe actually had,
Cool.
I follow Blythe, and she had posted about it, and
Yeah.
I've been advocating with December for the last few years. So
Cool. That's amazing.
yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm super glad that you joined this workshop. Like I said, I'm teaching this workshop next week, and then I have another course that I've been teaching. It's called Diving Deep into Understanding My Privilege. It's a 4-part course. I'll be teaching that one again soon as well. If you sign up on part of my email list or follow me on social media, if you're interested, you can kind of find out when the next free webinar is, or when the next class is, if you're interested in that.
Okay, thank you. Where are you at? Where do
I'm
you
in
live?
Seattle.
I'm from Seattle. Where in
Really?
Seattle?
I live in Shoreline. Is that where you're from?
I like Lake Forest Park, Shoreline. Yeah,
No
like
way.
I graduated Starcrest High School. Yeah.
Okay, that's so funny. I went to Shorewood High School.
Ah,
Wow. What year did you graduate?
2000.
Okay, I graduated from Shorewood in 2004. And funny thing about Blythe, that's actually how I know Blythe. Her and I were next door neighbors when we were kids. And so we became
Funny.
really good friends. We were best friends for the longest time. So she lived down the street from me, and she would come over and we would play with dolls, and we would get in all types of trouble. And so we were really good friends up until she moved to California, I think in high school. And then we've always stayed in touch, and we've always been friends. And now she's back up here. She's back in Seattle. And funny thing is, she lives down the street from me, which is so nice.
That's awesome. I'm friends with her brother Bronson and went to church.
Cool.
I went Way. So
Yeah.
I guess I probably went with Blythe, but I didn't know her. I just knew her brother. But.
Yeah. Such a small world, huh?
Yeah, that's funny because Seattle's super diverse, which I always loved, and I miss that being here in Phoenix. But I also have been realizing, over the last few weeks, like months, like I was very sheltered specifically from Black people, like because my mother, being an immigrant, she recognized white privilege.
Yeah.
And she was deeply offended the first time somebody called me Asian, which I am, which I get from her.
Wow.
Like, so
Yeah.
I was really confused because I'm like, but I am Asian, like
Yeah.
I'm white and Asian, but she was deeply offended. And she even said, like verbatim, she's like, well, the white kids have all the privilege, so I raised you guys as white.
Mm-hmm.